what does this theme mean? Like, we've had some very abstract themes where you're like, well, how do you interpret that? Like, it's like singing a song. Like, either you're an interpreter or you're not. Hello, Vogue. It's Sarah Jessica Parker. We're taking a little walk down memory lane through some of my Met Gala looks. Shall we open the book? Okay. Ah, yes. I don't know who put that wine glass in my hand, but I did not drink white wine in 1995 at all. And if I had that, I guarantee you when I left, it was still that full. This dress is a little bit mysterious, and my guess is that this was a dress from a thrift store, which then I had tailored and clearly did my own hair and makeup. I would never have gone alone. Like, I would have been way too scared, too nervous. I think I didn't know enough, and therefore I went. Like, had I known more, I probably would have found a way, regretfully decline your kind invitation. It's much more pageantry now than it was then. I mean, its aim was the same, right? Which is to bring attention to this particular part of that museum and obviously raise funds, much needed, but it was a quieter affair, simply put. When I was invited and told the theme, I said out loud, I really wish I could go with, and we called him Lee. I wish I could go with Lee. I wish I could go with the Queen. A bunch of things came to mind, like no, he would say no. He's already been asked. He's called for. He's obliged. And I didn't really know him well enough to be so presumptuous. I summoned the courage or whatever was needed, and I reached out and I asked, would he consider attending, like, with me, meaning more so me with him, like, could I be with him that night? And he said yes. But what strikes me most about this photograph now, you can see where his shoulder ends and I begin, and like there's like overlap there. I guess I've seen the picture a bunch of times and I know what this is, and I know what it took to, for him to make this and how much he cared and all the details and everything, like everything. But what strikes me about this photograph is like where our heads are and like how careful I'm being, or cautious, or the shyer he was, the more shy I became. And like, I see that in this. And like, I'm being like very careful of him. Like, I feel like I'm literally saying like, are you okay? Like, it wasn't a fun night. Like, it was, but it wasn't, because I was so nervous. I just wanted him to be okay. He knew how I felt about him, and there was like so much affection and such a deep admiration, and like everybody loved him because he was such a touching person. Like, he was a very touching person, and you were kind of in love with him, and I think I was just like everybody else. Like, I was in love with him. I have every pin he dropped from his mouth in my possession still. I have everything he cut off in my possession still. I have things that seemed like nothing from every fitting I ever did with him, I have in my possession. Halston was so American, and internationally so American. Like, when he traveled and did those amazing shows, the whole time I worked at Halston, he was, ever present. It's all I thought about. All I ever think about is the theme and influence. Whenever I go to the Met, I don't understand how everyone else didn't spend 7 to 10 months working on it. Like, I'm like, how do you not arrive exhausted, like, by the details of like getting it right? All these people came together and worked really, really hard to put together an extraordinary exhibit, and it all is like academic and historical, and then it's fashion, and then it's this, and it is an assignment, and you should interpret it, and it should be labor intensive, and it should be challenging, and it would be so easy to find a beautiful dress to wear that night. Like, that would be a great relief, and like going on vacation. But that is not the assignment. The assignment is the theme, and sometimes the theme eludes you. Like, you could spend days, and I have had conversations with Alyssa and other people like, what does this theme mean? Like, we've had some very abstract themes where you're like, well, how do you interpret that? Like, it's like singing a song. Like, either you're an interpreter or you're not. I mean, this was easier because it was like Halston and a certain silhouette was super American and super Halston, so that was fun. And 70s, very 70s, late 70s. I just love this dress. This dress is not something I normally wear because this collar is very high. It reminded me a lot, in a way, of like Lee Radziwill. And this dress reminded me a little bit of Valentino in the 60s. Like it touched on stuff, and I really loved it. Not very much like me so much, but it was McQueen, and I, wanted that. It's like a minty colored shoe, which also felt very 60s. There was so much thought about his contributions and, his singular approach to his work and, his draping skills, his cutting, like all the things that he did in his own way that made him so extraordinary. This is Valentino. I loved this dress. I loved this whole collection, that I remember. And this dress is substantial, like you can't tell, but this is like, I think it's taffeta. Absolutely beautiful fabric, beautifully made, as everything at Valentino was and is. And I thought it was very spot on to have shoes in the same fabric, which we also have in archives. It was so comfortable, it was so easy. It was like going out with friends. It didn't have as much weight around it and on it. It's always about the exterior. The only thing that makes it me is that I thought about it, the way my brain interpreted it. But everything else is really about the night and not about me. I should not pick favorites. And I'm not gonna say that it's my favorite, but it's pretty close. I wish you could see all the parts and pieces, the boots, the slit, the back of the hair, the back of the headpiece, the close-up of the work that's on the fabric of the dress. And then when I talked to Philip, because I always talk to him, he knew the theme, and he'll see what it is, and he needs time. We were afraid of the height. We didn't know the height. We weren't afraid of it. We were like, well, what's that gonna be for sure? And it didn't arrive until like pretty late, and then we got it, and then Serge got it on my head the day before, which was super helpful because we were like, oh, that's the proportion. Okay, now we know what we have to do. I went with Hamish, and I had to sit on the floor to get to the Met because the headpiece did not fit if I sat in a seat. You always work really hard. Sometimes it comes together in surprising ways. Sometimes it's exactly as you planned. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes you fall short for any number of reasons. And this was just one of those things that it just all arrived at the same time and everybody did their job. Super sentimental, obviously. And that, by the way, this hair might as well be a headpiece. We knew we wanted Mr. De La Renta to do this. This idea came up because of the underpinnings of Charles James. So like this lattice is more about the boning of the underpinnings. So then we went to Mr. De La Renta, and this came together as it does. And I asked Mr. De La Renta, can I please have your name in scarlet on the back of this dress? And no, I can't. And we pushed inside we were just like, who there is gonna get him to say yes to this idea? And I knew I wanted it in scarlet or poppy, it's true scarlet silk thread. He did it. And then people told us afterwards, he was so happy to be talked into it. He would never have said yes on his own because that would have been so immodest of him. But this was his last dress, to my knowledge, that he ever built. This was his last public piece. And the fact that it said his name big, that famous signature of his, that we blew it up, and I was like, no, bigger, let's go bigger. They were sending us this big? I was like, no. They were like, this big? I was like, no. This big, and we blew it up proportionately the way you could feel it, so I loved it, and I think that's a gardenia in my hair, which I thought was very right for the period. Sorry, did I skip one? Oh, we designed this ourselves. Philip did the headpiece. Lars Nord built this whole thing. We did it together. We did, those poppies. We took a bunch of stuff from inspiration and research, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. these shoes we did, SJP Collection did these boots. The headpiece had gone through, it had traveled from the UK, and it had arrived in customs. We knew that it had arrived, but it yet wasn't in our possession, and it was Sunday. There was no, like, we had no assurance that this headpiece was going to be in our hands by Monday. And there'd be no point in going to the Met, frankly, honestly. Like, I probably would have not gone, or Serge would have had to make a headpiece from hair. And so Alyssa was like, who cannot take no for an answer. It doesn't matter the obstacle in front of her. She's like, then I guess I will have to scoop up the ocean, move it to the side for a minute. And so she went to JFK and just demanded, like she just said, I'm not leaving here without that headpiece. But, you know, it's the Met Gala, so if it's not soup to nuts, if it's not stem to stern, then it's like you're like off balance. You can't come that far and then remove a piece. Like, it's all balanced. It's a physics game at that point. Of course, Hamilton had just opened, and we all were looking at the Hamilton costumes. We had this artist print stuff that really spoke to the theme of like machinery and hand coming together, and that kind of work and that kind of skill. And so I feel like you're not seeing it here. I love those shoes. I love that we did these two different things. These are my own brooches on the front of the shoes. This is a shoe, a satin we called Hamilton. I'm not good at like, hey, Lin-Manuel, look at me. Recognize anything familiar about what I'm wearing? Did you know my shoe, the satin we're calling Hamilton? Like, he already knew my feelings about the show, which weren't different than anybody else's. Like, we were all like hypnotized. Dolce & Gabbana. I mean, that headpiece was unbelievable, and it weighed like that. It was like this. It was no heavier than this. Very Italian, you know, marching through Naples with that on your head, not uncommon. This dress, the whole thing was like amazing. And once again, you put on that dress, and you're like, zip, I'll see you guys later. Certain things, when they're well made and tailored, and you just do it. You get in the car and you're like, okay, I have to scooch down, but you go into the Met. You know what I mean? Like, it's not taxing. The downside to that is you will be alone until 2, 3, 4 in the morning getting everything out. Like, you could be, because you're by yourself. Like, sometimes my husband isn't awake, and I don't feel like it's his responsibility. So I am alone so often, like, pin, like trying to, but this didn't have a lot of pins and it was pretty easy, yeah. With gratitude for countless happy, bittersweet, joyful, and privileged memories. The other way. And those were my Met looks. Take it or leave it.